Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ash. Today we've got a special guest for you. He's called John Strickman, and he, just like a lot of us, has gone through a lot of changes in his career path. In the last couple of years, a lot of people have struggled with being made redundant or losing their jobs out of nowhere and having a lot of turmoil in their personal lives and professional lives. John Strickman is no different, but his journey just started a little bit before that. A few years ago, and he's still been struggling with jumping around between different jobs and just for some reason couldn't hold on to the normal, regular types of jobs. Not that he was doing anything wrong, but just so circumstantially he was falling under some bad luck. But since then, he has literally turned his life around in the last couple of years. He's become a real estate agent, one of the most successful people within his region, and he's now building his own team and he's coaching and mentoring other people on how to become better real estate agents. And literally, just before the interview, he had just made a sale of over $1 million of a house that he was listing out. So this video is going to be insanely valuable. We're going to talk about all things mindset, communication skills, and really how to turn yourself around from feeling like you're in a downward spiral and just create that upward momentum so that you can skyrocket. So if any of you are in that downward spiral right now, if you feel a little bit lost, if you feel a little bit unsure of where your life is going, this video is going to shake all that up. It's going to take you to the next level, and you're going to be able to truly boss up your life. So if you like this sort of content, smash the like button, share it with a friend. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, and let's get this going.
So thanks, John, for joining us. Welcome to the channel, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
I mean, your story is really cool, and how you were in the kind of W-2 world, now going to realtor, and we're really excited to hear all about that transition and see what you can add to our listeners. But I really want to just start off by letting you take the reins and tell me a little bit more about your background, like what triggered the change, what were you doing before, what are you doing now?
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you. And basically my entire journey, so I'm now 33, 34 years old. So my entire journey, once you get past 30, you kind of forget how old you are, and that's how I feel right now. But my entire journey with jobs had always been in W-2 jobs. So I got a job at Sears, the store, when I was 16 years old, had always been in sales. And really had issues keeping jobs. Now, it wasn't like I was stealing. It wasn't like I was like not showing up to work. I'm very much a dreamer and a visionary. What I found was I constantly lost W-2 jobs. It was very frustrating. And so that's what happened. So I literally did this my whole life, never realized there was any other path besides a W-2, being an employee. And so worked those jobs forever, constantly, did well at some, got promotions, took other opportunities. So it's not like every single job I got fired from, but there was always this like discontent. And so in my last W-2 job in 2019, I literally just had this feeling. My wife worked at the company at the time. And I'm like, I don't know, things are off. And she's like, what do you mean you haven't been like, things are fine. Nothing's happened. It's not like you've been disciplined. And I literally, there was an app called Jabber that, we both worked at the same bank. And I messaged her and I'm like, my boss just called me. I'm about to get fired. And she's like, that doesn't make any sense. And I remember the day, February 26, 2019. And I went down to my boss's office and they fired me. And they said I wasn't learning fast enough in this program. And so from there, I kept interviewing for W-2 jobs, not realizing this is not where you're supposed to be. And also that summer of 2019, I went to get my real estate license. But I said, you know what? I'm a person of faith. And so I felt like, well, these jobs that I have interviews for, if God wants me to get them, I'll get them. Otherwise, we'll pursue real estate full time. It was the summer, probably July or August, 3 years ago. And I was like, I have one more interview. If I don't get this, I'm like 100% in on real estate. And I didn't get it. They went with, they said I was their, top candidate, and then an internal candidate came in at the last second and took the position. So we took that as a sign that I was meant to pursue real estate full time. When I finally really got into it, I'm like, this is like my zone of genius, right? Like I'm good at sales, good at relationships. I mean, your listeners can hear, like, I love conversations. And so that's basically what I've been doing since. I am full-time, like, in the real estate business. And I think that's why I've had success, because I'm I also had no other option, right? Like 3 years ago today, actually 2 years ago yesterday, I had my first official transaction in Pennsylvania. So it took basically almost a year to get my first deal. But since then, it's been like drinking from a fire hose, walking through open doors. I now host a podcast, which is the Real Estate Survival Guide, in the top 5% in the world in podcasts, that helps realtors survive in the business. Because now what I learned, I want to teach other realtors, like, how do you have success? How do you create success? And how do you, like, build something? So, and very blessed. God has blessed our family so much. My wife's been amazing. So yeah, that is kind of the journey.
John, that is incredible. Like, I mean, there's so many avenues that we can go down there. So, thanks a lot for sharing that. The big question I have for you, but like, in February 2019, you got fired, and then you decided to take a completely different route than what you were doing before. But how did you choose the real estate route, or did that kind of land on your lap?
I think everything happens for a reason. So I was part of a nonprofit organization, and someone in that organization, his name is Andy. And so I talked to Andy, and I remember calling him and saying, like, hey man, I'd love to, I think I called him and left him a voicemail, and I'm like, hey, I'd love to chat about real estate. He's like, sounds good. How's work at the bank? I'm like, that's actually why I wanted to talk to you. And I explained, I got fired last night. And he's like, what do you mean? Things were going so well. And I explained, like, yeah, I know, I'm as shocked as you. And Andy knew me for years at that point, right? Through this nonprofit that we worked together on. And so I said, hey man, would I be good at real estate? Like, if I'm not, tell me. And he's like, John, you would crush it, because you're good at, like, creating relationships with people. And you're good at selling, and so when you combine those things and actually care about people genuinely, you can, a lot can happen. And so that is how I really got into real estate. I had a couple other friends, and now I am on Andy's team and part of his team and help lead the team. So a lot has happened in a couple years, but it's just kind of, so I don't know that it fell into my lap. It was, I knew people in real estate that were having a lot of success, and they thought I would be a good fit.
You kind of realized that you needed to try something different, and you kind of went down that route, and then you identified your strengths, and now you suddenly play into your strengths, and all the great things start happening. You advance faster than before in 2 years. Now you're leading a team. But talk to me around the mindset of this, because being fired from jobs, changing from job to job, that must have taken a real big toll, right? So how did you manage to push yourself forward, even though when you got your new real estate job, you were still not having your first deal until almost a year later? So talk to me about your mindset around that.
Again, faith is a big part for me. So, like, trusting God and trusting Jesus that, like, things, that things will work out. I felt that this was the path I was supposed to go on. And so I just trusted that it would work. I knew from, knowing Andy, knowing people in the business, that your first year in real estate, if you can survive, you'll be okay if you can get to those first 12 months. So, like, I mean, this isn't, I will get to the mindset, but I think, I think the mindset was, at that point, I will do whatever I have to do to pay the bills for my family. So, dude, I was Ubering, I was door dashing, I was Grubhub delivering, I was out in the car, and actually, now I never got clients from it, but when I had people in the car, like Ubering, I'm like, oh, you're my captive audience. Somewhere in this 10-minute drive from your job to your house, I'm going to tell you that I'm a realtor. And so I think I just had to do what I had to do for us to survive, right? 2 years later, this is live, so I'm not gonna say, like, but 2 years, well, 3 years later, but like 2 years from my first sale, we're paying off our house shortly, right? And so
wow.
So we went from $70,000 in consumer debt and $160,000 in a house. I'm not good at math, but I think like 220, 230, basically in 3 years, boom, gone. And so, but I think the mindset is, this has to work, right? So many realtors that I coach and train have so many other things. They have full-time jobs. They have this. They want to do real estate on the side. I had no choice. 3 years ago today, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage. And soon, and I won't soon, my mortgage will be paid off. I will own my house outright that's worth $250,000. Now, again, we only owed 160. It's gone up in value. But I think the point is, like, you have no other choice. And so for your listeners, what is it? What is that dream that you're so good at? And I also think it's like hearing people, whether that's spiritually from God, for those of faith, or just people around you that, maybe people watch your channel and they're like, oh, I really appreciate his insight. He said this, that really should trigger me. What are people telling you that you're really good at and should be doing? I should have been in one of my big regrets. I should have been in real estate 10 years ago. Should have been real estate 10 years ago. I was good at sales and good at relationships, right? Like, that's literally the key. Sales plus relationships equals successful realtor or successful car salesman. But I think the mindset piece for me was, you have no other choice. You have to survive because you're not sure how you're paying your mortgage next month. And so do whatever you have to do. A few times I went and, like, on Craigslist did yard work for people, right? I did whatever I had to do to survive, knowing that one day I could, do what I want and enjoy life. And I mean, yeah, so it's been a journey for sure.
I totally love that. Right? It's dissecting that a little bit. What you're kind of saying is, effectively, you've got to be humble enough to do whatever it is you need to do. Because I know a lot of people, when they have full-time jobs after full-time jobs, and they suddenly find themselves out of a job, especially kind of everything that happened in the last 2 years, a lot of people found themselves in that position. They wouldn't do what you did, right? A lot of people would have just thought, oh, okay, well, this stuff, I'm not going to touch this. I'm just going to aim for this, even though that's not happening. And I'm going to get down on myself, and I'm going to go on that negative spiral. In this channel, we talk a lot about how to keep yourself from going down this negative spiral, and instead focusing on the things you can control and how you can move forward with it, which is exactly what you did, right? You're like, okay, well, I'm in this situation. I can either sit here and wallow and wither away, or I can see what I can do. I'm gonna list jobs on Craigslist. I'm gonna go and do Uber driving. I'm gonna go and do Grubhub, all these other things, because you got to do what you got to do, right? And that's a big mindset of the high achiever. Is literally just that. So I totally love what you said, and especially the fact that you're saying, like, conversation skills plus sales skills is literally going to get you to be successful. It's like in any business, right? Every business is, an entrepreneur is always selling something. Kind of talk about this in the channel. It's like you're always selling a product, a service, or yourself. So ultimately, those are the ultimate skills you need.
No, for sure, man. And I think, I think what I want your listeners to hear is, I interviewed someone yesterday on my podcast, and this person, very similar story, except theirs was 2015, mine was 2019. They worked a government job and got fired. And people here, in the States are always like, oh, you can't lose a government job. You can lose any job. Your W-2, and he said job, just over broke. He said your job pays you just enough to keep you there so that you don't quit. And that was like a mind-blowing moment, even for me, who's now, very like entrepreneurial mind. Your job, I mean, and maybe there's jobs that care about you, but the majority of W-2 jobs, you are there to punch a clock, do the work, and leave. And that's why I couldn't keep a job, because I was such a dreamer. I'm like, let's improve this. No, John, we don't want you to improve things. We want you to just go and do the work and then leave. Right? And you look at businesses here in the United States, Sears, Kmart, Boscov's, but like all these big stores. 100 years ago, people were ordering cars from Sears catalogs, and now they are bankrupt. And it's been interesting watching their story, because it was my first job. Why did they fail? They did not adapt, right? You have to adapt. Even in real estate, we're talking right here in mid-June. In 2 weeks, I have an episode going out about the market, and I'm like, well, I have to almost hold it for the last second, because the market might shift again in a week. And so I think the point is, if you want to be successful, how are you going to adapt? How are you going to learn? How are you going to take the wisdom that people are giving you and apply that to what you're doing? You know, and are you going to let a W-2 job control you and say, oh, you are worth 5 cents more to us this year, an hour this year than you were last year? And I just don't. I think people really could be entrepreneurs and build a successful business.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one of the things you said there was really interesting about, your entrepreneurial mind and you're a big dreamer. So you're always thinking about how you can change things, improve things for your own life and for the business. How do you apply that in your current role of work?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of see two different hats, and some people only see one side. So like I'm always thinking, how do I get better for my real estate clients? How do I get better for my real estate podcast listeners? So it's two audience. This is clients, right? Buying and selling homes. This is realtors, right? They want content to help them succeed in the business. For my clients, I'm always watching market trends. How are things shifting, right? I just had a super big listing that we talked about before we jumped on video that sold yesterday. I think there's, so you're always watching market trends. I want to be ahead of the change, right? So the episode I'm recording for a few weeks, I'm telling realtors over here on this hat, right? Changes are coming. How are you going to adjust? How are you going to tell your clients, hey, homes might sit on the market for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's okay. That's normal now, when previously they would have been scared, right? And then same thing for my clients. I have to be able to show them and tell them, hey, this is how the market is changing, right? Okay, you were pre-approved at $300,000 at a 3%. But that was 6 months ago, and rates have shifted. And so now we're going to have to get a new pre-approval and see what you can actually afford. So I just think it's staying ahead of the curve. Like, I think always learning and always growing on both sides with both hats, really, in both businesses, helps me just do a better job leading, right? For my team, for my clients, for the realtors that trust me when they listen to the podcast a few times a week.
And that's awesome. But it sounds like it's a lot of work, right? Like in this channel, we talk a lot about how to be more effective during the day and things like that. And one of the most common complaints I get is that that's a lot of work, Ash. Like, not everybody wants to work all the time and all this kind of stuff. But it sounds like for you, especially having two hats on, you're doing your day job, but to be honest, having a podcast or a channel or anything else is pretty much another job, right? Because you have to do the research, the scripting, the video, the editing, all of that kind of stuff. So how do you manage it? How do you manage your time?
I love that you asked this, because 2 years ago, I asked a friend that I had just met the same question. And so it's very weird to like have it on the other side. So thank you. Yeah, it's very weird. But here's what I will say. I have a great friend, John Stoggy. He writes books. So he wrote a book released by Penguin Random House, Dwell on These Things. And he's a pastor, but he was on my podcast and said, everything that I say yes to is a no to something else. Right. And I love that. So every time I say yes to a podcast interview, a meeting with a client or whatever, that's fine. I'm saying no to something else. That might be my kids, my wife. And so that's right. I have to work. So it's not like, oh, never say no to business opportunities. But I think for those of you listening to this, prioritize. What is the most important thing in your life? For me, that's my faith, and then my wife and my kids, my clients, right? So my clients and my podcast, those all come 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. And so I think prioritize the most important things. Schedule those, right? Someone told me once, schedule life first. SLF. If you just write SLF on the top of your planner, schedule life first. What is important in your life? Put that in your schedule first, and then work in reverse. I think so many of us in business, entrepreneurs, we do the opposite. We're so busy putting the meetings, the podcast interviews, the clients, the settlements, all of that on our calendar, all of that. And then we get to the end of the week and realize I spent no time with my kids this week. I spent no time with my wife. Schedule life first. So today we're recording this here in the morning here in the US. I have a couple meetings. I have this interview. I have a meeting at 1 and 2. Besides that, I know I can have time with my kids. So I've already talked to my wife about what's our day look like. When can I spend time with you guys? Because that's what needs to be there first. And I feel like the success, I'll present it this way, and I'm not explaining this well, but imagine that you make millions and millions of dollars a year, right? You make millions of dollars, but you're married, you have kids, and it happens, right? But imagine if like you never see your kids, and suddenly you look and they're 16 years old, and you're like, I missed your whole life. Well, you imagine that, God forbid your wife wants to leave you because you work all the time, and it happens, right? We see it. What was it worth, right? What was all that worth? And so I think, I can sum this up with this word. I've been thinking a lot about the word legacy. What do I want my legacy to be? It all comes down first to my faith, my family first, and then how do I impact others, right? And so if I schedule my life in a way that's like my faith, my family, and then how do I impact people, that's the formula. And again, man, I'm no expert. I'm figuring it out. Me and my wife had a conversation this week so it's not like I'm the expert, but I think like I'm always trying to grow and improve in scheduling the important stuff first.
What you did really well with the SLF you mentioned, the schedule life first, is so good. I made a video previously this year talking about exactly that, but what I called it like the 3 steps, which is like free time, which is effectively like family time, and then your life events that are happening, and then work events. But mine was just long-winded, so SLF, I'm going to steal that from you with your permission. But I totally love that. I think the amazing thing with everything you mentioned there was it's a routine, right? It's a bit of a thing that what's important to you. Once you prioritize it, life becomes so much easier to manage, and you can be more effective because that if you put in this amount of work during this amount of time, then you get to go have fun. You get to go do whatever you're going to do without the guilty feeling within you. Because I guess a lot of people procrastinate, and so they feel guilty when they're not working because they're like, oh, I could have been more effective before. So talking about that, it must be quite difficult when in the beginning of your realtor career, you're trying to hustle, you're trying to grind, but there aren't results coming. So did you feel the need to procrastinate, or how did you get over that?
And again, that what I just talked about, SLF, I didn't do it well. I'm still working on it. And part of that was because when I became a realtor, it was hustle, grind. So much so that actually, a couple months ago, it might have been March or April, I have a board over here that I'm looking at right now with all my active clients and deals and everything. And I had 8 deals under contract. Now, 2 years ago in my first full-time year, I did 9 deals total. So imagine I'm doing basically 8 deals at once, which is basically 2 years ago would have been a year's worth of work in 60 days. After that, wow. I got so sick, man. I was sick for like a week. I won't get into the details, but your listeners can imagine it was not pleasant. Okay. And I basically was in bed, right, and the restroom for two or 3 days, right? And in that moment, I thought, like, dude, knock it off. Like, you've burned yourself out so bad that now you cannot function. You're literally in bed on the second floor of your home. You cannot leave because you feel terrible. Your stomach is so upset. And so I think the point is, the lesson here is, yes, grind, hustle, build your business, but not at the sacrifice of everything else, right? Your mental health, spiritual, emotional health, those things matter, right? All of those things matter, and they have to be important. If you were to say to me, what's your biggest goal right now? It has nothing to do with the podcast. It has nothing to do with real estate. My biggest goal is sleep better. That is the one thing I'm working on, right? Because I know if I sleep better, I show up to meetings better. I show up for my family better. And so I think it's like, yes, hustle and grind, but not at the risk of sleeping. If I look at one of my health apps right now, I bet you in my last 30 days, I probably average 5 hours a night, right? You should be, now maybe not 8 hours a night, but you got to be sleeping more. And so Yes, hustle and grind, but hustle and grind for 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day to get your business off the ground, right? Don't hustle and grind for 20 hours a day. You have to without balance. I'd like your listeners, to think about a car, right? You think about a car with 4 wheels. Okay, you're driving down the road. Well, you haven't been sleeping, so your front tire falls off and you fall off a cliff and die. Sorry to be morbid. Maybe you just get hurt. Like, but without all your wheels working properly, you're not successful. I think the businesses try to teach people now multitask, multitask. It's literally the worst word. It's not good for you, right? It's not. Focus. Now, maybe it's like my ADHD brain, but like I focus on one thing. I can't worry about what I have to do tomorrow. Let's focus on what's here today. Okay, when you're done, you're done. And either maybe you start the stuff that's stressful for tomorrow, maybe you spend time with your kids, but like that wheel's gonna fall off if you don't take care of your body.
If you're just working all the time, it's going to be very difficult to put in that well-being, that self-care later on. So yeah, having that self-care routine for yourself is going to be so vital to increase that performance. The other thing you mentioned, which is very cool, was the importance of communication and conversation skills. But you mentioned it in two different ways. One was that you had a conversation with your wife around what the day looks like, what you're going to do with your kids. So I want you to touch on both if possible. One is the communication with the family and how important that is for your life. And the other side is communication skills in business. Like, how has that helped you to move forward? I'd love to hear both.
So I will start. I'm probably easiest at the business, and again, I'm learning to shift my focus, but I'll start with the business because from the moment I became a realtor, I tried to have great communication with my clients. I do think that comes from the 16 years in sales. So I would tell people, now it got me into trouble sometimes, but if a client would text me, in our initial meeting, oh, hey, Ash, nice to meet you. Yep, excited to work with you. Let's talk about your wants and needs in the house, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I would say, by the way, feel free to text me in the middle of the night. My phone's on Do Not Disturb, but I'll get to it the next morning. And then I told people, if you do not hear from me in 2 hours, I'm dead in a ditch. Send an ambulance. And they sort of laughed like, oh, that's funny. Like, but so it was great that I said I'd communicate well with you. Then I got so busy that I was like, okay, I need to say 4 hours. I need to say I'll get to you today. But I think all our clients want in any business, real estate, whatever you're doing, all they want is good communication. If you're working for me and you say, hey, John, I'll have this project done by end of day and it's 8 a.m., I don't care if it's 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. I just want you to like be a man of your word, a person of your word. And so I've found with my clients, they love good communication. About half my clients have come to work with me after firing another realtor is what I've found. So not good communication. What my favorite example is, someone told me, now they were selling a $200,000 house, buying a $400,000 house. Like, this is a $20,000 deal. I couldn't, or total. I couldn't imagine not answering the calls. The agent they were working with, they would text on a Friday, hey, we'd like to see this house this weekend. It just came up. He would text back on Monday, I'm sorry, it's already under contract. Like, can't even imagine. So they hired me, right? And so with my clients, I have to realize a lot of them are triggered, right? Because the realtors they've worked with sucked. And so I have to show them a different experience. I can't be the used car salesman or the guy that doesn't call back. So I have to have good communication. I'm better at doing it in my business. And so it's shifted. And I'm like, oh, the same communication that your clients want, your wife wants. My kids are young. They're 2.5, and 1. So they don't communicate like, they're kids. But I still think like, hey, daddy's going to go work for a little bit after nap time. I'll see you and we'll do something fun. Right. And just even for my son, Caden's like little brain, okay, daddy's working, right? Because I don't leave a lot of the stuff I do from my office. I don't necessarily leave the house in the morning, buy kids and family, and come back at 6 o'clock. I think communication is key, right? We have to communicate well. Imagine if I just leave the house and don't even my wife's like, where'd he go? What's he doing all day? Like, now again, she's not like, where is he? What? But I think good communication is so key. People want, now this relates more to business than my wife, but people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. Right. And with my wife, it's, well, I show her love and affection by communicating well. Hey, this is what I'm doing. I'll try to be home by this time. Some, things come up. With my clients, know, like, and trust. Well, how do I get communication is a big piece of getting you to know me, like me, and trust me. It's huge. And so for all your listeners out there, are you communicating well, or even what are you doing? Know, like, and trust. And maybe that's an area that they can improve.
Absolutely. Because one of the things that, even if, this is really important when you have your own business, but it's also really important if you're in a job. Would you agree? Because when you're in a job, your manager, whoever else is assigning you a project or work, wants to know how things are going. And it's really bad if the manager always has to come to you and ask, like, hey, what's happening here? We had this situation before when I was at work where people, they'd assign jobs in the morning. Throughout the day, no one said anything. And then in the evening, the manager was like, hey guys, what are we doing here? And the people would then raise all of these questions they've been harboring all day. So now you're sitting in the evening, problem solving, when you could have been doing that throughout the day instead of just waiting around for somebody else to check in on you. And interestingly, I was having a conversation yesterday with someone I was about to hire in my team. And this is a test since that happened to me when I was in a project at a job. Now I do this test when I'm hiring someone. So I literally just said, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z in the morning. Let's catch up again at 6 p.m. This is before we've hired them. So 6 p.m. comes around and I'm like, hey guys, what's happening? I haven't heard from you all day. I'm like, oh, really sorry. We had this problem. We're not ready. We're not where we are. So I was like, look, we can't work together, because it's completely fine to be late on things if you are able to communicate that ahead of time, especially in your job, I guess, as a realtor. Like, I'm not a realtor, but from a buying experience, our estate agents were really, really bad here. They just did not tell us what's happening until we had to chase them up. And I guess animosity builds up over time, right? But if you are good at communicating, whether it's in a relationship or it's in a job or it's in your own business, and suddenly everybody's on the same page and everybody likes to be understanding, don't they?
And I think about this too. So imagine, I think a lot of my clients, when I say something's going to get done, they trust it and they let it go. Right. So for those, listening in a job, or imagine like working for you, Ash, like if I can trust you, oh man, that's worth so much. I hire someone to edit my podcast, right? And I know he's a man of integrity. And so he sends me a bill at the end of every month for the podcast. I don't go back and look, okay, was it this many minutes or this many? Oh no, it was actually $195, not $200. Why? Because he's built trust with me, right? And so maybe he's charging me $200 when it's $197, right? But that's not happening. If you build trust, you earn. Imagine if your boss or whatever is like this, they want you in these restrictions and these rules, and then you're like, you do a good job with that. There's a great verse in the Bible which talks about being faithful in the small things, you'll be trusted with bigger things. And I think that's such a good business technique. So okay, I'm your boss, I give you these little tasks, you do it, and you go above and beyond. Well, I trust you with a little more. And then I said, like, this project done by Thursday, and on Wednesday you have it at my desk. I pay you, and you come to me and like, oh boss, you accidentally, I only worked 32 hours last week. I took a day off. You didn't owe me for the 40 hours I took unpaid time. I trust you more, right? So look at the sphere you've now earned, that you can. So now you can work all in this sphere by earning trust. If you don't earn trust, you're kind of like this. And if you lie to me, you're like this. I mean, I have a policy, a lot more in my real estate business. Like, if you lie to me, we're done. If you curse at me, we're done. If you don't, and so in the same way, I can't treat people like that. I need to be honest. And so, yeah, I think honesty, integrity, good communication, it's all a huge part of being a good boss, business owner, or employee.
I totally love what you just said So that's really good. And you mentioned right in the beginning about how you have big dreams for everything is mapped out for what you want to do. So talk us a little bit about that in two ways. I want to dive a little bit into like how important is having a dream or a vision like that, and then like what is yours?
Yeah, I was really encouraged by a friend who asked me, they said, do you track your transactions? And I'm like, no, I just kind of, and they said, well, if you don't track what you're doing, how do you know if you're having success? And I was like, that's kind of a mic drop moment. How do I know if I'm having success if I'm not tracking it? Now, again, I think it's about the heart of it. Am I tracking it to see like, ooh, did I hit? And okay, no, I got to like haggle more clients for more money. No, it's just growth and improvement. And so I learned that I had to track what I'm doing, right? Like my production in my first full year in 2020 and 2021, and now here in 2022, I have to track that stuff to know if I'm having success. And yeah, my big dreams. Oh my goodness. So I just talked about how we are going to pay off our house. I think my next big dream, I've always dreamed about investing in real estate. And so that's probably my next step. If you ask me like my 5-year goal, I want to be someone that really grows the podcast and helps people through the podcast. And so that's a big dream of it, like helping people grow in their real estate business. I'd love to see the numbers shift. 80% of realtors don't last 2 years, 87% are gone within 5 years. I'd love to see that shift and more people survive it. And I'd love to be a part of that. In terms of like tangible, so that's kind of like you can't touch and feel that. I mean, at the moment, I really want to have rentals, and I would really love one day. I haven't talked to my wife about this communication, a little bit, but I would love to one day, in how I grew up and what I've seen, I see a lot of like minorities, African Americans, like people not understanding financial literacy or being able to purchase a home. And so my dream is to be able to, whether I teach finances to people who don't grow up with money and don't understand how to use it, or whether I one day own like a property where like I don't need as much money and I can have like a lower, like a reduced rent situation for people in a situation where like their rent is exorbitant. I said that wrong, but whatever. Where where their rents out the wazoo. It's really like I think my heart is definitely to like have a rental for lower income. I'd love to do this. I'd love to teach people, anyone about how to be an entrepreneur and like the options that can come and the multiple streams of income that you can have. I'd love so yeah, those are like the big lifetime goals of like once I build all this to like do whatever I want when I want, really help people that weren't taught the things that I've learned over the past couple of years. I'd love to kind of give back like that.
That is awesome. That's so good. Having this, like, all of that drives you, right? It gives you so much energy and fuel to do what you want to do. So I totally love that. John, what can our listeners, viewers do to help you on your journey? How can they reach out to you? Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, first of all, Ash, thank you. You are an amazing host. I love being on podcasts where it's just a conversation and they have great questions. And you, of all the shows I've been on, you are like on point. So congratulations. You do a great job. And thank you for having me on. Yeah, you are so welcome. Yeah, you can check out the best place to really find me is to go to therealestatesurvivalguide.com. That'll connect you with the podcast. So the podcast is the Real Estate Survival Guide. It helps realtors. But really what I've found is, so it's very interesting. Someone asked me the other day, like who listens to what? Really, probably about 30 to 40% of my listeners are not in real estate at all, but they listen to my show and say, this is great business advice. Thank you so much. And I didn't want to just be the business survival guide, right? That's not niched down enough. So real estate was my niche, but really the stuff is just good business advice. So the realestatesurvivalguide.com, you can find that there, or Real Estate Survival Guide, wherever you listen to podcasts. And feel free to connect with me. I love helping people. I love, I'm super passionate. We didn't jump into it a lot, but super passionate about like social media and growing your business through social media. So if you ever have questions, please feel free to reach out. If you just search my name that you can see that is like the hardest name to say, it's actually Shookman. So John Shookman. If you search that on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm there. Happy to connect. Yeah, and if people are interested, I mean, I've been doing with realtors like these free 15-minute social media audits because I've built my business really on organic social media. So happy to, but seriously, and I don't care. It's not a pitch, but like if they're interested and they're like, I do need some social media help, like feel free to connect with me. I have a Calendly link where they can book that. And again, you're not buying anything. I have nothing to sell. But if you just need help with social media, feel free to connect. But thank you, Ash. Thanks for being an amazing host and having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You were an excellent guest. I mean, I'm sure the listeners and viewers would agree that you have incredible energy. Like everything that you told us today is just, kind of driving home the passion that you have and the real life experiences that you've lived through, and you can really feel that coming through. So I'll leave all of your links in the description below. So thank you so much for making the time to be a guest.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all your listeners for checking this out. Thanks, guys.
Wasn't that an amazing interview? Oh my God, I loved talking to John. That was insanely valuable. And look, the great thing was John didn't really hold anything back at all. If you enjoyed this sort of content, let me know. Smash the like button or leave a comment below. If you have any questions about how you can do the same thing for yourself, either put it in the comments or reach out to me in my DMs. The social links are down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, because I'm going to be putting out a lot more content like this and everything around how to boss up your life. So, catch you in the next one.